Here's another how-to video. In this case, how to tell executives that we're screwed. Because look, all projects have challenges and issues. It's just the nature of doing projects. It's why we get paid. And executives need to hear the truth. And our job is to be the translator between the oh crap moments and an action plan. And that means raising the issues early and clearly and without drama. So today we're going to talk about 4 techniques that I think will be useful for telling executives we're screwed and hopefully maintaining employment. And look, why bad news is important. Executives don't want surprises, right? Unless it's a financial one. Uh, and bad news hits harder the later you deliver it. And so generally on projects, they don't just go from green to red. There's leading indicators. And so it's important to recognize these and communicate them early so that it doesn't feel like a surprise. So our job isn't to hide fires, it's to report them. And good framing, like the pretty frame you see here on the left, leads to better decisions and less chaos. And that's where our credibility is built, in the bad moments, not the good ones, because again, every project will have its challenges. And most times we can't control the problem, but we can control the narrative and help influence putting out the fire. So this is really about trust and clarity and again, keeping your badge active if possible. So the 4 techniques we're going to talk about today is transparency, understanding the style of the leader and speaking to them in that manner, leading with the facts, and bringing recommendations. So the first one is about transparency. And that means coming prepared for the discussion, gathering the facts, gathering the information, polling the team, building together any kind of metrics or charts so that you can say what's happening clearly, which includes, by the way, the root cause. Here's what's happened and here's why it happened. So this is where you stick to the facts, right? Instead of just we're off track or we're not going to make it, what are the facts? And also admitting the impact. So here's the implications of what's happened because they will ask. And they're going to find any kind of data as well. So you don't want to hide it. You want to sort of present the information. And you want to use sort of an executive friendly tone, right? Concise and neutral. And again, not panicking because the transparency brings the credibility, whereas panic just leads to way more meetings. So technique number 2 is every executive has a different style and approach and way that they want to work and they want to get information. Some want the headlines, just give me the summary. Some want the novel, they want the story building up to the end line. And it's important to know which so that you can tailor your presentation accordingly. You also want to adapt to their tone. Some are calm, some have a sense of urgency, some maybe just focus on numbers. So you want to bring charts, right? If they're a visual thinker like that. If they're verbal, maybe it's sound bites. And a lot of executives, if they don't like surprises, you might want to give them a pre-brief. Maybe it's a heads up. Maybe it's somebody letting them know that there's a challenge. Maybe it's even a pre-read with the information so that they can read it and come prepared to ask questions, which is also a style that a lot of executives have. If they're high level, you want to speak at a high level and not detail every detail if that's not their style. Um, Considering their priorities and ultimately tailoring the delivery message. So sometimes they like emails or one-on-ones or calls or send in somebody else. So really understanding their style, and that might mean asking a mentor or somebody who maybe knows them if you don't know them well. It's going to go a really long way. Technique number 3 is leading with the facts, right? So numbers and dates and what changed and so on. It helps them stay logical and focus on the facts. A structure I really like to use is sort of here's what's happened. And again, I keep this high level. Here's what happened. Here's why it happened. And here's what that means. And this way you avoid the blame game. It kind of doesn't matter whose fault it is. They really care about the outcomes and the progression. And you want to be clear and again, not with details and facts. And again, you don't want to bury the lead in all of the different details and information. You want to be very clear on sort of what you want the pointed conversation to be. And it makes you sound like a leader and not just a victim. So the 4th technique is always bring recommendations. So you don't want to come with a problem and sort of dump it on their lap. You want to say, hey, here's several options. And for each option, what's the trade-off, what's the timeline, and what's the risk? Which shows that you've thought through them. And you also want to come with a recommendation. Hey, my recommendation is this because you and your team do know the information in most cases better than the executive, and they're looking for you to come with that expertise. So the options reduce their anxiety, right? And again, we're trying to minimize the number of meetings, and if appropriate, maybe there's sort of a quick fix, right? Something that sort of gives a band-aid, and then maybe a longer-term solution. And then you want to be explicit on what the ask is from them. So I talked about sort of the early warning signs. So hopefully you don't get to the point where your project's on fire, because again, when the information is delivered late, it's worse, and they will ask you, well, how come you didn't know this? And if we do our jobs well as diligent PMs, in almost every scenario, we had some sort of indicator. And so I like to put sort of warning shots early that, hey, there's a trend or there's a risk. I don't need you to do anything yet, but I want to give you a heads up that this thing is sort of trending uh, off course. And this is where that cadence comes in, whether it's risk calls or dashboards or so on, because you don't want to get to the point where there's a major crisis and then you have to answer, well, why didn't you tell me early? So it shows that maturity, it manages their expectations. And then when something does happen, you can say, hey, look, we gave you a heads up. Now it's actually come to fruition and we need your help. So you want to give headlights, right? Not taillights. You want to be looking forward. So look, let's bring it all together. And you can see here now the executive has the fire extinguisher and they're helping to put out the flame and everybody's happy, although it looks like it's the same person. So interesting in this company. But you want to deliver the bad news early, clearly, and without theatrics. You want to use transparency to build that trust and credibility, right? Be fully transparent with what's happening. Speak in their language and in their style. Definitely focus on the facts in that rubric that we talked about. You want to bring solutions with options and recommend one of them. As much as possible, have an early warning system, and your tone matters. So coming in, all on fire, like the original picture, is probably a way to sort of set them off. You want to be calm and concise and confident. And again, because they're going to look to you for your expertise. So the real secret is, look, they don't care about the problem. As I mentioned, they know that you and the team have expertise, so they want to know what your plan is and your recommendation. And doing all of this sort of moves from we're screwed into we have a path forward. Let me know what you think and if there's other techniques that were missed, and thanks for watching.